All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining our live Ask Me Anything on the Microsoft Sentinel SIEM migration experience. In this session, we will show you how the SIEM migration experience helps teams to move from legacy SIEMs like Splunk and QRadar to Microsoft Sentinel with a more guided and low friction path. We will cover what it does today, how it works, and the questions that you ask most. We'll start with a presentation, and then we will close with a live Ask Me Anything. So where you can ask your questions, and we will have them answered live by our product team that is on the call right now. My name is Sarah Vetter. I lead the worldwide customer success business strategy for Microsoft Sentinel. And alongside with me, I have a team of awesome people from the Microsoft security team. So let's bring them onto the screen now. And thank you so much, team. And let's do a quick round of introductions. Starting with the top of screen. Yes.
Hey, thank you, Sarah. Hey, folks, my name is Daniel Soto. I'm Senior Product Manager for Sentinel SIEM and Defender XDR. Pass it along to Margaret.
Hello, everyone. My name is Margaret Mora. I'm a Product Manager with the Microsoft Sentinel and XDR platform. Yes.
Hi, everyone. Yossi Hasson here. I'm a Senior Product Manager working on Microsoft Sentinel, and I am the Product Manager that owns the SIEM migration experience that you are about to see and ask questions about right now. Clement?
Hello, everyone. Clement. I work for the partner and team at the Cloud Accelerate Factory in Europe, and probably the least technical guy, but I work on the deal construct.
Hello, everybody. My name is Paul Chirilla. I'm the Cloud Factory technical lead for the security part across EMEA, and I also lead the French side along with Clement and the rest of the team here. So I'm happy to have you here, and thanks for joining, everybody.
Thank you so much. Now we're looking forward to walking you through the Sentinel SIEM migration experience. If you're watching this live and you have any questions, go ahead now and ask us your questions on the tech community. You might have to log in and create an account. Once you're logged in, you can ask your questions or comment on the tech community page. But now let's get ahead started, handing it over to Margaret to kick us off.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Once again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're joining us today. Before we go to the live Q&A session, we want to first recap and have the presentation on the SIEM migration experience and also look at a quick demo, and then we'll go to the live Q&A. You can, you can see my screen. So let's get started. So we look at the challenges that customers face as they migrate from one SIEM to Microsoft Sentinel. We'll have an overview of what the Microsoft Sentinel migration experience is about, and then give you more details on how Microsoft can provide experts to help you in your migration journey. So, what are some of the challenges that customers face? A SIEM migration project tends to get complex. It has different phases. In each phase, there are different tasks. So it's a very complex process. The entire journey to migrate from your source SIEM to, let's say, Microsoft Sentinel can take up to 15 months. And this is because the SIEM project would go through several phases. You have the planning phase where you have to plan different teams. And then you go through the data onboarding phase where you have to decide which data sources you're going to onboard from your old SIEM to the new SIEM. Then you also have to migrate your detections and validate those the use cases for those detections. And then finally, there's the training for the SOC team. So this entire journey can take up to 15 months from your source SIEM to the new SIEM. Now, as you go through each of these different phases, there's a lot of friction because there's a lot of collaboration between very different teams. You have different teams, for example, different teams on the data sources, then collaborating with the detection teams with different tools, and also going through different approval cycles. So this brings a lot of operational friction. So how does the SIEM migration experience help? And we're saying it's the easy way. It doesn't eliminate all the friction or all the challenges, but it makes it easier. So we have the AI-powered Sentinel migration experience. It's now in GA or general availability, which we know that some of our customers require our features to be in general availability for them to use in production environments. So the SIEM migration experience addresses those challenges in 3 ways. First is the discovery and planning stage. So we will be able to discover from your origin SIEM or your source SIEM the type of detections you have. And then within the migration experience, you'll also be able to track the migration as it goes through different phases. You can track it as dismissed or in progress. The second way is the detections. The SIEM migration experience is able to map your source SIEM detections to Microsoft Sentinel out-of-box detection rules and also to the Defender XDR native detections. This is something that we've recently onboarded as well. So it's important to note that this is not just a syntax translation, that is just translating from your source SIEM to KQL. It is understanding, the AI agent is able to understand your source SIEM detections and then map them to out-of-box detection rules. So it's not a syntax word-to-word translation. Then finally, it's the data sources. So with the Sentinel migration experience, we are able to match the recommended detections of your source SIEM and also provide the recommended data connectors that you need to enable so that the recommendations of the detection rules we provide, you'll be able to enable those detections. So we cover both the detection rules migration and also the data connectors or your data sources that you need to enable in Sentinel. What are the source SIEMs that we support? We support Splunk and QRadar today out of box. And the goal is to provide an end-to-end experience for the SOC engineer from the onboarding through the migration of the detection rules and the data sources, and finally optimize, because the Sentinel migration experience is part of the SOC optimization feature in Sentinel that will continuously monitor your SOC deployment or your Sentinel deployment and provide recommendations on how you can optimize your SOC operations. So that is for the product capability. Now let's look at the expertise capabilities as you migrate from your source SIEM to Microsoft Sentinel. We have the team of experts called Cloud Accelerate Factory team. And this team is, they focus on accelerating or supporting customers in any of the Azure projects and security projects. And in the context of today, they will be providing you 3 things. First, they will support you with your Microsoft Sentinel migration journey or adoption journey. So right from enabling Microsoft Sentinel, using the Sentinel migration experience, and making sure that you migrate your detection rules to Sentinel. Then the second thing they will offer is the Accelerate is built on industry best practices. And this means that we have learned over years and through engagements with many customers, and we're bringing these repeatable frameworks to help you in your migration journey. And finally, with the Cloud Accelerate Factory, you'll be able to maximize your investment because you can then offload the tasks of the repeatable tasks of the SIEM, setting up the Microsoft Sentinel SIEM and detections, and then you free your SOC resources to focus on the main tasks of running the SOC. So that's we are offering the combination of the product, which is the Sentinel SIEM migration experience, and the expertise or people that will support you through the journey. So let's look at a demo of how this SIEM migration experience tool works, and then I'll wrap it up with the prerequisites or what you need to do to get started with it. So to begin with, in this demo, you need to have Sentinel in the Defender portal, And once you're on the Defender portal, you go to the SOC optimization blade and then click on set up your new SIEM. And once you click there, you have this view where you select the source SIEM, which in my case is Splunk. And then I will bring the export of the Splunk rules. We do provide documentation on how you can extract the rules from Splunk or QRadar. Here, we review the export, the file that you've provided. And the purpose of this screen is to be able to understand the data sources and detection rules so that you can indeed confirm that's the right file you wanted to upload. Then here, select the workspace and click next. Then the SIEM migration analysis will begin. Here, I'm going to the SIEM setup analysis so that I can track the status of the migration job. You will see the migration job run through all these different steps. And once it's completed, you'll also be able to download a CSV report that you can share with people who don't have access to the portal or for any reason. Well, as the migration job is running, you will start to see recommendation cards popping up. What that means is you don't need to wait for the migration job to be completed to start to see the recommendations. Let's look at one of the recommendations, which is the AWS. So once you open the recommendation card, I talked about tracking the progress. So here you'll be able to track the progress by changing the status of the recommendation card. And we also provide an in-product experience for you to give us feedback directly within the SIEM migration view. You can see we provide the value here for the data connectors that you need to enable, the detections, and all this is mapped to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And you can see what coverage you need to enable to get full coverage. Click on full details and we go to the detections. As I said, we support two types of detections. We support both the Defender XDR native detections and the Microsoft Sentinel detections. For the Defender XDR detections, they will be, once there is a match, it will be enabled and already be in active state. This is, we don't expose the logic for Defender XDR native detections, and that's why we are not able to have them, they're already in active state. For the Sentinel out-of-box detection rules, you can immediately enable them, or if you want to have more control or you want to customize the recommended detections, you can see here I clicked on that detection and then I was able to go and create it manually. This opens the analytics rules wizard, and then I'm able to go through the steps to customize this out-of-box detection rule as per my scenario or my use case. So there is also the capability to compare the recommended Sentinel detection rule with the original Splunk detection. So here you can see I have a side-by-side comparison of the KQL of the recommended detection and the SPL from the Splunk detection rules. So those are the detections, and this is the detections view. The detections that are available to be enabled, it's because that we already have the AWS connector already connected in this demo environment. I want us to also have a look at a scenario where the data connectors are not enabled. So let me look at this recommendation card. I know for sure this one, I don't have this data connector connected. So the first thing is, you see when you go to the detections for this, you will notice that nothing is connected. The required connectors are not connected. And when I hover over this button, I see that this rule cannot be enabled because the required data connector is missing. When I go to the connectors tab, I can then click on that recommended connector. And once I open the connector page, I'll be able to configure the Sentinel data connector that is required. And once that is connected, I will be able to enable the data connection. So that's it for a quick demo for how the SIEM migration tool works. Let's look at what is required. So first, you need to have the Microsoft Sentinel onboarded in the Microsoft Defender portal, that is security.microsoft.com. This experience is not available in Sentinel in the Azure portal. It's only for Sentinel in the Defender portal. Then you need to enable Security Copilot in your tenant. The migration agent, the SIEM migration agent, does not consume any SCUs. It's a free agent. However, we do need that Security Copilot to be enabled in your tenant. After that, navigate to the SOC optimization, as I showed you in the demo, and then go through the guided steps or follow the guided wizard to enable to run through the migration experience. Finally, take advantage of the experts from the Cloud Accelerate Factory by reaching out to your Microsoft account team or your partner and have all the support you need to migrate from a product perspective and also from a people or skills perspective. Thank you for the time. Sarah, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, Margaret. Now, everybody, we're going to move to the Ask Me Anything section. So if you're watching this live right now and you have a question for our team, go to the link below and ask us your questions on the Microsoft Tech community. Again, you might have to create an account or log in, and then you can create your question as a comment on the Microsoft Tech community. And I believe we already have received some questions ahead of this webinar, so we'll start with those already. Thank you so much for submitting them. The first question is, why migrating to Sentinel now? What would be a trigger moment? Like, why has there never been a better time than now?
So the different drivers, we've seen some customers are on their cloud journey, cloud adoption journey. They want to focus on a SIEM that is taking the lead on AI and building agentic SOC experiences. So those are some of the reasons that you would want to migrate from your source SIEM to Microsoft Sentinel. Also, the combined power of having your SIEM capabilities combined with the XDR capabilities is also something that we've seen our customers appreciating. Yeah.
Thank you. And then the next question is, do my detection rules and data sources carry over? This one's for Yossi.
Yeah. So sure, of course, that's the purpose of the SIEM migration tool, to help you actually understand to which Sentinel out-of-the-box rules your origin detection rules map to, and help you with understanding this matching, enable those rules, and so on. And part of the recommendation, as we've seen in the demo, is that we also show very clearly which data sources are required to be enabled for those new Sentinel rules to work as they should. So bottom line, yes, both the Sentinel, both the rules and the connectors are carried over, but just in the right Sentinel and Defender XDR format, along with the required connectors that enables those rules and makes them work as they should.
Okay, thank you so much. Then the next question is there an automated tool for SIEM migration?
I'll take that one, Sarah. Thank you very much. So, guys, I think the automated tool in itself would be the migration experience tool itself. As you can see by Margaret's example, it doesn't necessarily provide you a full-on manual. It does an assumed overall progress of what you have in terms of the rules. It does a lot of matching across different rules, and as well as different connectors. Now, what's interesting here is that it's not an automated script in a classic sense, as which you run a PowerShell command and it does everything automated. Not at this point. However, I can tell you internally at Microsoft, there are works in progress to streamline and automate more and more outside of this process. So for right now, the migration experience is a tool that we've built with purpose in mind, while we're leveraging AI, Copilot on the back end to go ahead and automate more and more of the process.
Thank you. And then the next question is, looking at the factory offer that we just saw in the presentation, would there be a limit in the project size for the factory?
Let me take a stab at this one as well. So in terms of the factory, guys, if you think of the actual Microsoft factory and what we're leveraging here, it is, first off, the simple answer is there's no limit. I've not seen a limit yet. I've had projects where we've migrated upwards of 90,000 resources, and when you enabled CSPM, CWP across close to 100,000 resources. And I've also had projects about 3 VMs. So it really isn't any specific limit. I think the one thing that the audience should keep in mind is the larger the project, the more it's going to have to be spread across different waves, right? This isn't a one-time process where it's just a kind of a dump and run type of stuff. We're going to split it out to digestible chunks for the partner, for the customer, for us as well, and to make sure that we give it the proper attention. So if your project is significantly large, we're going to work with you to break it down across waves and ensure that each one of those waves gets across the finish line successfully.
Sounds amazing. And how long does this process of migration usually take? And can I run 2 SIEMs at once?
I think that was also for me. I'm getting the good questions here. So realistically, yes, you can run the SIEM experience at the same time as your current SIEM environment. However, try to keep in mind that it's going to run more in an alerting type of mode, more of a passive rather than active mode. So you need to ensure that you're very clear internally in terms of the process and documentation, what you are supposed to be following as a team, right? Because if you're going to your boss and you're saying, hey, I've migrated everything, I got everything streamlined, perhaps his expectation is that you've already cut over to the new SIEM, to Sentinel. So ensure that during this migration process, during the deployment, during the rule translation process, you set the correct expectations internally to ensure that everybody's aligned and there's no gaps in coverage as far as, hey, who's feeding the dog? Is it me or is it you type of situation? So that would be my best practice. You can certainly run it. The experience itself, if I believe correctly, it takes up to 24 hours for us to analyze, or it could take up to 24 hours for us to analyze all the rules, if there's anything that's specifically large in terms of context. But realistically, it's a fast project. It's a fast motion. Just make sure you set the correct expectations internally, because I've seen that being a pitfall in the past, guys.
Thank you so much. And what about old data and long-term storage? This one's for you.
Thanks, Sarah, for this question. So we are actually asking here 2 different questions, right? One is about what customers should do with all data when they are migrating to Sentinel, and how does long-term storage or data retention works in Sentinel. So when it comes to old data, what we usually see that customers are doing, they're actually keeping the old logs in the old system because they want to start fresh in Sentinel, and to make sure that they are compliant with the requirements to save historical data. However, if you want to migrate this historical data to Sentinel, it is possible. It's not part of the SIEM migration rule experience migration tool, but it's possible, and we have a lot of blogs and documentations that explain how to do it. When it comes to the long-term storage, so by default, the logs that are ingested into Sentinel are retained for 90 days. Anything more than that is an additional retention period, and we can actually extend that using Data Lake for up to 12 years long of long-term storage for future storage. And of course, this has cost associated with it, and you should consult with your accountant to understand exactly the costs and the value and which retention period you should choose that will align best with the compliance requirements you have in your organization.
Thank you so much. And what about AI? What does AI actually do to day-to-day in the story? This one is for Daniel.
Yep, I can take that one. So really, I mean, we've got AI everywhere, right? We've got AI in custom detections. We've got AI in analytic rules. We have AI inside playbooks. We have security copilot integration across. We have AI in the migration tool. So you can see that AI has already been sprinkled across our platform, to help accelerate the adoption, to also help reduce time to value and time to return when it comes to the incidents, to the detections, and also giving the analyst that's operating inside the platform the ability to get qualified results, right? And ensuring that the teams understand exactly what they're seeing. It gives you insight inside of the detection. For detections and custom detection rules, we actually allow you to self-correct and autocorrect syntax. So you can see where now AI is being a part of the day-to-day experience when it comes to ensuring that we are empowering your SOC operatives where it matters most and meeting your incidents where they're at.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And the next one is also for you, and that is how hard is the KQL learning curve? Because of course, as we're adopting Sentinel, KQL will be a topic. So how does the learning curve look like for my team?
I mean, KQL learning curve is again, we have KQL across Lake, we have KQL across Sentinel, we have KQL across Defender. So it's really going to be something that individuals that already know KQL, it's going to be pretty much kind of a transition over. So you're not learning anything new. It's just other platforms where we have your data stored and you can query the data using the same language that you're already accustomed to.
Sounds very good. Then the next question would be, why Sentinel over Splunk or Google, and am I logged in?
Well, really, from a unified security operations platform, Microsoft is the leader in the market, right? So we're now introducing Sentinel inside the Defender XDR portal experience. We're now putting everything together in one place. Now you don't have multiple planes of glass to have to sift through things. You can now just log into security.microsoft.com. And then on the left pane in the navigation, you're going to see all these powerful capabilities that this awesome panel has been talking about, including, the Sentinel Data Lake. You're going to have SIEM, you're going to have XDR, you're going to have hunting, you're going to have case management. I mean, everything is all in one single portal. The experience is just that unified experience that people are just bragging about, that Microsoft is just doing a very good job at making sure that SOC analysts can spend time in one portal.
Sounds very good. And what would be possible pitfalls? So what are the most common mistakes and how can we avoid them?
I don't know if that's a question for me or for someone else on the panel. If it's for me, I'll take it.
I can take it. So okay. First, it's how to migrate. So this is a good time. A migration project is a good time to evaluate your current deployment and your detection use cases, and decide to review them. Check what of the detections you want to keep, which ones you want to migrate, and which ones you want to discard. What that means is, as you're exporting your Splunk or QRadar rules export, it's a good time to decide what rules to keep and which ones to migrate. Secondly, with Sentinel, with the Microsoft Sentinel SIEM, the recommendation is always to review which data sources you want to build detections. And this is where, again, the migration experience comes in, because we will map your source detections to the Microsoft Sentinel detections. And then from there, you'll be able to understand which data sources to prioritize to send to the analytics tier, which is the tier that is used for detections. And then for the rest of your noisy logs, you can send them to the Sentinel data lake. And then, of course, you need to validate your detections before you completely decommission your old SIEM. So you could look at running a side-by-side deployment until you're fully satisfied that Microsoft Sentinel is able to cover your use cases. Yeah, and of course, because it's a cloud a type of SIEM, you need to put in place governance and set your cost management to avoid high-cost ingestions.
Some great suggestions. Thank you for those, Margaret. And what would be the fastest path to value? Is there any help available for us? So I think it's for Yossi.
Yeah, well, so it's important to understand that the SIEM migration experience and tool is meant to help you understand quickly what capabilities we have in Sentinel out of the box that are at least equivalent or exceeding to detections you had in Splunk or QRadar. So the fastest path to value is to actually start with those recommendations. They will probably solve 70 to 80% of the origin detections that you have in your origin SIEM. And that's the biggest help, right? Going through this Sisyphic work of analyzing your maybe hundreds of different detections that you have in Splunk or QRadar. Some of them were out-of-the-box detections. Some of them were custom detections that you created over the years. And the SIEM migration tool can actually help you analyze each of them, regardless if they're out of the box or custom, and see which is the best equivalent, either in Sentinel as an ethical that you should enable and you can customize, or as a part of native detections that are available in Defender XDR, which are just there, and the tool will just let you know that they are there and you are covered against this threat, and you don't even need to enable anything from your side. And of course, it's a great idea and great practice to use this tool along with the help from the Microsoft Cloud Accelerate Factory team, and they will be happy to help you run this tool and deploy, or let's say adopt and enable the migration recommendations that this tool creates.
Amazing, thank you so much. And then there was a question about whether Security Copilot is required and do I need to pay for it?
I'll take a stab
It's
at that
also
one.
for me.
Do you want me? You want to take a stab at it?
You can
I was
take
going to
it,
give you a
Paul.
break.
You can be my
Let me
guest.
give the short answer here, Yosin. So the short answer is, guys, yes, Copilot is required. And the other part to this is you're not consuming any security units, so you're not going to incur charges part of this motion. But the reason is because the migration tool itself is built on AI and Copilot on the back end. So we use a lot of automation, a lot of AI powered to match rules, to identify certain indicators, to identify connectors across the board. So it's effectively built on AI automation on the back end. However, please be assured there's no consumption. There's simply all you have to do is flip a flag in your tenant that says, okay, you see SU's units are enabled, Copilot is enabled. Now, I think, a lot of times what I hear from other customers and partners is that, hey, do I trust Copilot? How do I trust Copilot? Do I trust you guys? I think that's a lot deeper conversation to have than for this specific section. But just know that the tool itself is built on AI, which is why we do require Copilot to be enabled on the tenancy.
Let me add one point here, Paul. I think
Please.
that enabling Copilot as a part of the SIEM migration journey is a great opportunity for customers, for you to actually try the capabilities of Security Copilot. You have a good excuse to enable it with a few SUs as part of it, or a few overage SUs allowance, and see the capabilities that the different Security Copilots, agents, and features brings you in Sentinel, right? So the SIEM migration part is not built. It's free in terms of SUs. The others are, but it's really worth the try to try the threat hunting agent, to try the phishing triage agent, and to try other capabilities such as the incident summary capability that is powered by Security Copilot, and many others out there. There's a lot of innovation there, and if you're not familiar with what Security Copilot can do for you, for your analysts, for your organization, that's a great opportunity to learn more and experience.
Very good. And the next question, is there anything I need to keep in mind as a managed provider? So anything different from managed providers? Maybe this one also for you, Yossi. Is there any tool limitations, etc.?
Yeah, so for managed providers, yeah, so we're talking mostly about MSSPs here. And for MSSPs, what we see is that they manage multiple workspaces of multiple customers. And it's also actually a great tool for them, because eventually what managed providers want to do is to get their customers enabled and working on Sentinel as fast as possible, so they can focus on the more higher value, higher quality activities with the customer. And this migration tool really helps to do it quicker, and it aligns with the unique detections and requirements of each customer that he already has, and it really helps the managed provider to, as I mentioned before, to solve, let's say, 70 to 80% of the usual detections that the customer has. And then the managed provider can actually enable additional detections, some of them from the Sentinel Content Hub, and some of them the unique detections that this managed provider has and brings to the table for those customers that trust this managed provider. So I think the bottom line here is that if you're a managed provider and your interest is to mainly give the customers the unique value that you have over Sentinel as a managed provider, which is different than other managed providers, if you use the SIEM migration tool, you'll get to actually showing and deploying that unique value much faster than if you wouldn't use this tool, because all of the, let's say, regular detections and regular capabilities that we have out of the box will be much quicker for you to identify and enable on the platform.
Yes, I think that's a great framing. And what would happen to SOAR playbooks and automation rules during the move?
I'll take that one. I think we need to keep in mind here that the tool itself will focus, as of right now, of course, it will focus on the detection rules and converting those into KQL. So in terms of the automation migration, they tend to stay on your side, right, as a customer, as a partner. So what we can do as factory, and this isn't necessarily SOP, standard operation procedure, but I have seen it, and because we work alongside with you to see if we can migrate some of those old SOAR automation playbooks if you need to from your old environment. But the tool itself is going to primarily focus on the analytic rules and converting those into KQL. So that would be the short answer for that, guys.
Thank you so much, Paul. And then I have another great question. I'm currently working as a detection engineer focused on analytics and detection content. What skills and experience would you recommend to transition into a Microsoft Sentinel platform engineering role, responsible for log source onboarding, data normalization, connectors, and SIEM management?
Okay, so thanks. This is a good question. So for the log source onboarding, so when you talk about bringing data sources, this starts to fall outside the scope of just detection rules. So in general, the most common log sources would be in the Ceph or syslog format. So having some experience or playing around with Ceph and syslog data sources. And you can also look at how to interact with APIs so that you understand how to bring in data from APIs, extracting data, understanding, for example, for Sentinel, we have the cloud, the CCF connectors, which are built on APIs. So that's also a place you can look at. In terms of SIEM management, some customers look at infrastructure as code, how to manage Microsoft Sentinel as code. So you can look at interacting with the different Microsoft Sentinel or Microsoft Graph APIs and managing that through code, through repositories. Yeah. And then finally, for the normalization, you already work with detection, so you already have familiarity on building detections across different data sources. So you can start to put together those patterns on how you normalization is really understanding what are the common schemas that I can use across different data sets and create detections. out of with the abstraction of the different log sources. So you already have experience of that. So I'll just say build on it and start to look at building detections across and how you can the schema can be abstracted from the individual or vendor-specific data sources. Yeah.
That is pretty great. Thank you, Margaret. Personally, I also always recommend our Microsoft certifications. They usually have a great plan in place of getting you from A to B. And then also, I personally also use Copilot to draft a learning plan for me based on my current skills and where I want to get. I also recommend that path. It's really great. Next question. How are custom or in-house log sources handled when there's no out-of-the-box connector? This one's for Margaret.
Yeah, so remember that in the way the migration experience is mapping this is we will map the detection rule and then recommend the data connectors that need to be enabled for that detection rule to be enabled. For custom log sources, unless it's beyond, it's not in, because we do have like for syslog and Ceph, especially syslog, we do support custom log sources. So if we identify that is supported, then we'll recommend. And also we are looking at enhancing how we read or how the agent understands or is able to understand the data sources from your source SIEM, that is Splunk or QRadar, and this will help us to better understand what are the data sources that we need to map those to. So for custom log sources, so think of it from you remember for the migration experience, we are starting from, we have to map your detection to an out-of-box detection rule, and therefore we will have an out-of-box connector that supports that recommended detection rule.
And I can add a little bit more to that as well. So we also have what's called the custom connector using the AI agent in Microsoft Sentinel. So it's called the Sentinel Connector Builder. So if you have any custom connector sources, I would recommend you read up on that. We can share a link that can talk to you a little bit about how much the Sentinel Connector Builder works and helps you build the necessary flows and queries for your custom connectors.
Thank you so much. And we have next question. Does Sentinel also ingest data from AWS, GCP, and other multi-cloud or on-prem sources? This one's for Paul.
That's a fantastic question, by the way, and it raises up quite a few different times in my experience. So the short answer, I like to give the short answer first. Yes, absolutely. It is built in mind with multi-cloud and multi-tenancy aspects. So Sentinel itself can ingest data from different areas. It's not limited. Now, there is an aspect of Defender XDR as well, especially now if we're talking about on-premises, for example, right? On-premises architectures. My best recommendation for most partners is think of Azure Arc as a deployment, right? The agent itself is free of cost. It's only features after that you can enable. But to get the full landscape and the full benefit of Defender XDR, CWP, CSPM, and Sentinel as well, Arc should be considered for on-premises environments. Now, there are certain legacy environments, obviously nothing 2003, it might not work that well, right? We can agree on that. But realistically, on-premises should be handled via the Arc connector, because you can get logs from on-premises as well. We can get certain aspects of it, but they're not going to be so rich, let's say, unless we actually get Arc enabled. Now, in terms of multi-tenancy, I'm working right now with a very large customer where they're bringing in AWS and GCP into their Defender portal, their Defender XDR, and from that Defender Portal XDR, we're actually parsing logs as well with Sentinel across of it. So there is definitely possibility to do that. There aren't any limitation on resources. I haven't seen any bugs or any limitations in terms of what we can handle and the type of environments. And to give you another interesting point here is in terms of we can do, for example, another great customer, I like to give these stories here that I'm working with, their type of a parent tenant with multiple child tenants across geolocations, right? So what they want to do is their SOC team, their Center of Operation and Security, they want to manage different log analytics workspaces from their own tenancy without having to reach out to each one of the child environments, right? So if you're going to do something complex like that, you're going to need organization trusts in between the different tenants. You're going to need some rules, configuration, some flows. And not to forget, you're going to need Azure Lighthouse, which is a key piece of managing different tenancies in terms of Sentinel. So long story short, yes, it can be done. We're doing it every day, guys. So keep up the great questions.
Just to add quickly that yes, we have AWS GCP data connectors, and for your on-prem data sources, if it's for syslog, we do support those log sources as well. If you have high-scale requirements, we have the Azure Monitor pipeline if you do not want to use the normal log collectors with the AMA enabled.
Fantastic. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you so much. And we also announced just new capabilities for UABA that also are relevant for AWS GCP. So I highly recommend looking at those previews. Now, one more question. What exactly does the factory do? We talked about it a couple of times. And how do I get my project into that? This one's for Clement.
Yeah, I can take that one. So to keep it super simple, the factory is a team of hands and keyboard engineer and architects. That's mostly what we do. So we're there to kind of accelerate the projects. So once you have already a target in mind, so let's say one of the more smarter people than me in the call there that kind of give you a design of what you want on Sentinel and help you get there, the factory team is there to help you migrate and develop the solution, right? So we have a few let's say migration play that we can cover there. The first one, let's start with a simple one. Maybe it's Sentinel Greenfield deployment. So let's assume you don't have any traces of Sentinel there yet, and you want to develop that. We'll provide resources to help you set up your Sentinel environments. We have a few other cases that we see a lot on the field. Typically, if you already have a competitor solution, let's say, for example, Splunk or QRadar, and you want to migrate to Sentinel, that's where we'll come into play as well to help you make this conversion from your existing solutions to Sentinel. So help you on the migration journey and provide you resources to get that far. How do you actually get the factory team into your journey? So there's different ways to do that, either from if you're working directly with a Microsoft team, or if you're a partner as well watching this stream now. We can work directly with partners, we can work directly with customers, we can work with a system that is a bit hybrid there. And basically, the factory team is trying to accommodate with many scenarios. So we have different ways to get leveraged into a project. But the idea is we try to understand what kind of situation you're in, and we see where we can provide resources for you to get there. So that's a simple way to phrase it.
Thank you so much, Clement. Now, we have gone through all your questions. I believe there is one more thing that we can show you from an engineering perspective, which is the SOC optimization. And I will hand it over to Yossi.
Thanks, Sarah. So to the dessert of this AMA webinar, Ask Me Anything webinar session, I want to show you some of the capabilities that we have in SOC optimization, in addition to what we learned about SIEM migration. Just want to make sure that my screen is visible. Yes, it is right now. Great. So that's a live demo. And as you know, live demos can fail. So excuse me if things don't work. That's usually what happens in live demos, but let's give it a shot. So if you go to the homepage of Defender, you'll see a lot of different cards. One of the cards is around SOC optimization. It provides you an overview about optimizations data and optimization opportunities that you have in the organization and what you did recently. If you want to go to the details, you can press optimize your SOC here or go to the SOC optimization page from the side, from the navigation bar menu. And there it gets interesting. There, actually, you see the details of the different recommendations. And I do want to go through the different types of recommendations so you understand their value. And of course, hopefully you'll use them next time you log into your Sentinel environment. So if we look at the SIEM setup category of recommendations, here we have actually two subcategories. One is the SIEM migration or the SIEM setup recommendations that you've seen in Margaret's demo. But the other one that I want to point out here is the similar organizations recommendation. And that's an interesting recommendation because that's actually a recommendation that analyzes the tables that you have, the ingested tables that you have in Sentinel. It analyzes your industry and your type of customer, and it compares that with other similar customers. And based on their usage of tables and connectors in Sentinel, it actually recommends you what you should enable to work similar to other similar organizations that are in similar domains and industries. It also gives information about how much other customers are using this table for their detection jobs to be done or for their investigation objectives. In this case, the recommendation is to enable the Microsoft Entra ID connector that will ingest the sign-in logs table that will also help you allow you to enable a lot of rules. We see here 61 rules that could be enabled, and if you go to the details, you can see the full list of the MITRE tactics and techniques that those rules will cover for you, and also a spider chart that shows where you are today versus where you can be if you'll enable this table and the analytic rules that are running on this table. So that's one great value, and it helps you improve your detection coverage. Another kind of recommendations are around cost optimization. And here, it's a very unique recommendation because it's actually a recommendation that we give to customers that allows them to save money and to pay less to Microsoft. And what we identify are two kinds of cases. One case is around tables that are not used enough. And I want to show you a specific one. It's called alert info tables. And in this recommendation, we tell you, okay, this table has not been used for 30 days. We recommend you to do one of both options. One, save money by changing the data tier. Do not retain this data in Sentinel, retain it in the data lake tier, and you'll pay less. Or if you actually want to get value of this table, go to Content Hub and actually enable analytic rules that are working with this table to get value of this table. Right, so that's one recommendation that will help you save costs. And another one that will also help you save costs is the unused columns. So we actually go down to the granularity level of the single column in a table. And look at this example here. You can save almost 12 gigabytes of monthly in the last 3 months just by removing one column from a table that anyway is not used, right? And you have here instructions on how to remove this column. It's not so complex as you think. It's just a simple data transformation rule in log analytics. And if you press here, you'll go directly to where you should do it. And you can copy the data transformation rule, enable it there, and it's done. And you save 12 gigabytes per 3 months that you are not taking advantage of any case. And then there is also another set of recommendations that focus on coverage improvements. And there we also have two kinds of recommendations. One of them is focused on threats, different threats, threat-based recommendations, such as human-operated ransomware, such as adversary in the middle, such as ERP financial process manipulations, and others. And the other one are kind of business risk related configurations. So they're less around a specific threat, but more a specific risk to your business, and they align with which industry you are part of and which business risks are relevant for your industry. Let's look at one of those threat-based recommendations. They are very similar to the business risk recommendations. And here, what we see is basically first numbers telling you how many different detections you can enable, how many different response sections and products are relevant against this threat. Also, the MITRE chart that we talked about before, the spider chart. And you can go to the full threat scenario and learn about the specific detections and capabilities that are enabled in your Defender deployment, Defender Sentinel deployment, or you can enable to improve your coverage and detection capabilities. So it spans through both the different products we have in the Defender's suite. So here you see, in addition to Microsoft Sentinel, you see Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Identity, and you see that they are enabled for this organization, so you're covered. And if you want to go to the details, you can also see which exactly detections, which native detections those defenders are relevant to this threat. And of course, here they are covered because those are kind of detections that are already always work, and you don't need to enable them. When you go to Sentinel, so as you see in Sentinel, we have 64 possible detections. They're not covered in this case, and you could go into the details of each of those 64 detections and to see their tactic, technique, and so on, and to see if they're enabled in your organization, right? And if they're not enabled, you can quickly go to Content Hub, download them, and enable them, and that will be reflected here in this recommendation, and be a great experiment or game to add more and more and more capabilities until you see that you are fully covered. Once you actually enable everything, or also in the process, it would be great to open this MITRE ATT&CK view and see how enabling all of those recommendations, all of those detections, improved your posture, your coverage in relation to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, right? So what you see here is the parts of the MITRE ATT&CK matrix that are relevant for this threat. If you press one of those tactics and techniques, you can see full details about which detection we recommend you to enable, how many of them are enabled, and so on. It really help you focus your efforts around specific tactics and techniques. Last thing around SOC optimization, which is also very relevant for MITRE, is the coverage improvement by AI MITRE ATT&CK tagging. So I've shown you before that we can overlay your detection and your protection on the MITRE matrix, but for that you need your rules to actually be mapped against the MITRE tactics and techniques. And this recommendation actually helps you identify analytic rules and detections that are not mapped to the MITRE tactics and techniques, and they recommend you to map them to the right tactics and techniques that we actually identify via using AI on your detections, even if they are custom detections. And if you actually tag those rules, you press here, tag all rules, or you choose the rules that you want to tag, they will be tagged immediately in MITRE tactics and techniques, and that will be reflected also in the MITRE matrix that we just seen before. So really will help you to understand your full coverage. That's it for the SOC optimization demo. I hope you like it, and we're happy for you to try it.
Thank you so much, Yossi, for the demo. I personally really like the risk-based and coverage-based recommendations. I think it makes it very concrete and actionable and getting value out of Sentinel very quickly. Now, we're at the top of the hour. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today for this Ask Me Anything session on the Microsoft Sentinel SIEM migration experience. Thank you for the great questions. If you're watching us live and you want to go back to any portion of this webinar, you will be able to do this because we will post this recording on demand, and you can go back and watch this at the end of the live stream. You can visit the link below to rewatch it. And if you're watching this on demand already and you have a question and you are not able to join us live, you can go to the Microsoft Tech Community event page, and our team will continue to be watching the comments and answering any questions that you have in the next couple of days. Now, thank you again for joining us and wishing you an amazing rest of your day. Thank you and bye-bye.